I think my time left isn't long. So, there's a secret I must tell you. On a windless, quiet night, only Samantha's voice, my MIL, could be heard. Sometimes struggling for words, Samantha shared with me an unbelievable secret. 5 years passed since then. One morning, what I thought was like any other, our caregiving life suddenly ended. It was a beautifully sunny morning. Sparrows visiting the garden chirped adorably as they hopped around. Entering Samantha's room, I said, as usual, "Good morning," while opening the curtains, but there was no response from her. I wondered if she was still sleeping, but Samantha had quietly passed away to heaven in the middle of the night. The movements afterward were very swift. Since we had already braced ourselves for this, the funeral went smoothly without any hitches, and as I stared at the room now devoid of Samantha, my husband Laurie threw his formal suit at me roughly from behind. "Hey, slave! Take this to the cleaners!" Our marital relationship had deteriorated to its worst over the 5 years. Gritting my teeth, I picked up the suit from the floor and found an envelope in the breast pocket. Inside the simple envelope, one might get from City Hall, was a divorce application filled out by Laurie. "This too, right?" Thinking this was the best timing, I immediately signed my name on the divorce application and submitted it to the local office. It was an impulsive act, but I was prepared. Ever since the day, 5 years ago, when Samantha confided that secret to me. My name is Karen. Laurie and I met through our companies and married in our late 20s, which was fine, but we were not blessed with children and had been diligent about preconception care. Even after marrying Laurie, I continued to work without quitting, but one day, Samantha's health deteriorated, and I found myself in a situation where I had to care for her. Laurie would come home from work, loosen his tie with a tired expression, and sit on the sofa, staring blankly at his mobile phone screen. Laurie's hair was disheveled, and his skin was rough. Lately, even on his days off, he seemed physically and mentally exhausted from visiting Samantha in the hospital. I made sweet coffee for Laurie, and with a slight nod, he took the cup and sipped it. "Are you okay? You seem tired." "Thank you. But I'm okay. How is Samantha doing?" Wrapping his hands around the coffee cup, Laurie took a moment before answering. "She had a chronic illness to begin with. I think a relative will need to take care of her from now on." "I can take care of Samantha." Surprised by my offer, Laurie's eyes widened. Samantha and I were close, and when she was feeling well, we would go out for lunch or shopping together, so I didn't mind taking care of her. I remembered Samantha jokingly, "Maybe I'll ask you to take care of me someday," saying one day. Laurie carefully placed the cup on the table and hugged me gently, looking down. That was the last day of our preconception care. Laurie didn't say it explicitly, but I had given up on the idea of having children in my mind. Proposing to move in with Samantha to care for her was just an excuse I wanted to end our preconception care. Initially, Samantha opposed the idea of us living together and taking care of her. "It's too much to ask, Karen." Holding her hand, which she said with genuine regret, I shook my head. "There might be some shortcomings, but please let me do my best." I'm sorry, but really, thank you." Samantha cried tears of joy in front of me and Laurie. As I stroked her trembling shoulders, I desperately tried to hide the dark thoughts sinking within me. I had convinced myself that a happy home was one with children. Unable to imagine happiness without children, I felt as if I had been freed from the fear that had engulfed my future. And then, I realized I was imposing that excuse on her. I quit my job and decided to live for Samantha and Laurie. At that time, I had no regrets at all. Half a year into living with Samantha, Laurie's return home became late due to his busy work. After Samantha fell asleep, I finished washing up in the kitchen, took a shower, and the clock pointed straight up. At that time, I had started making handmade accessories as a hobby, barely selling them online, and Samantha said, "It's beautiful." I was happy to be praised. No matter how late Lori returned, I always stayed up, carefully crafting each handmade accessory one by one. Lori came home in the middle of the night. He placed his commuter bag in the living room without a word and headed to take a shower without meeting my gaze, causing me to feel a bit irritated as I questioned his back. "Been late recently? Busy with work?" "Well, yes. Almost every day you're doing overtime." "Aren't you tired?" "Well, yes." While giving non-committal answers, he took off his clothes and went into the shower. I sighed and slumped my shoulders as I gathered Lori's discarded clothes. Lately, I had fewer opportunities to talk to anyone other than Samantha. Lori hardly ever saw Samantha, using work as an excuse to go and even on holidays. That day, I really wanted to have a proper conversation with Lori, so I decided to wait for him to come out of the shower. Seeing that I had stayed up for him, Lori made an obviously bothered face and approached me with a beer he took from the fridge. "Aren't you going to sleep? I know you're busy with work. But let's have a conversation as a couple." "A conversation as a couple? For example, what about?" He looked at me, propping his cheek with his hand, slowly swirling the beer he had drunk halfway. "That's it." Hoping to have him see the handmade accessories I made, I handed Lori a pair of earrings I had just finished. The earrings, made of natural stone parts, would clearly appear amateurish upon close inspection, but I doubted Lori would notice. Hoping for words of praise like "it's pretty" or "you did a good job," Lori glanced at them uninterestedly before dropping his gaze to his mobile phone. "Isn't it beautiful? I love these colors. Can you sell these?" "Well, I'm trying to sell them online, but it's not easy. I'm just a beginner." "Well, yes." Lori responded indifferently. Before the caregiving began, Lori's skin, which had been so tired, now looked very healthy, not showing signs of the continuous overtime fatigue. As for me, I hadn't put on makeup in a while and had been looking in the mirror less frequently. I felt somewhat embarrassed thinking that I might appear utterly exhausted in Lori's eyes now. At the same time, feeling it was unfair, I decided to speak up boldly. "Can you give me a break for a little while? I'm tired from caring for Samantha." "That's a woman's job. Don't take it too seriously, just do it casually." Finishing his remaining beer, Lori headed to the bedroom. Just do it casually. Wondering how to interpret the words "caregiving is a woman's job" and "just do it casually" for the care of his own mother, I was troubled. Afterward, as I couldn't sleep at all, I found myself staring at the empty beer can Lori had drunk in the living room. And despite it being the middle of the night, Samantha came to me. Thinking she might need to use the bathroom, I was about to stand up from my chair. "Let's talk for a bit," when Samantha stopped me. "Karen, I'm really sorry. It seems I've disrupted your life for me." Instantly realizing she must have heard my words about being tired from the caregiving, I apologized, placing my hand on my chest. Samantha, with a sad voice, said, "Don't apologize," placing her hand on my shoulder. Her palm was very small, thin, and frail. "I don't think I'll live much longer. So, there's a secret I need to tell you." In the still, windless night, only Samantha's voice could be heard. Sometimes hesitating, Samantha confided a shocking secret to me. 5 years passed since then. One morning, which I thought was just like any other, suddenly marked the end of the caregiving life. It was a very sunny morning. Sparrows hopping around in the yard were chirping cutely. Entering Samantha's room and opening the curtains as usual, I said, "Good morning." But there was no response from Samantha. I wondered if she was still sleeping, but Samantha had quietly passed away to heaven in the middle of the night. The movements afterward were very swift. Since we had already braced ourselves for this, the funeral went smoothly without any hitches. And as I stared at the room now devoid of Samantha, my husband Laurie threw his formal suit at me roughly from behind. "Hey, slave! Get this cleaned!" The relationship between us had deteriorated to its worst over the 5 years. I gritted my teeth as I picked up the suit that had fallen to the floor and found an envelope in the breast pocket. Inside the simple envelope one might receive from City Hall, there was a divorce application filled out by Laurie. "This too, right?" Thinking this was the best timing, I immediately signed my name on the divorce application and submitted it to the local office. It was an impulsive act, but I was ready. Ever since the day, 5 years ago, when Samantha confided that secret to me. On the way back from the office, I contacted a lawyer who had been referred to me by Samantha. Life continued in a monotonous fashion without ever seeing Laurie's face from that day on. After Samantha passed away, it felt as if the will to live had left me. No longer was there anyone to call my name, no need to wake up in the middle of the night worried about Samantha. When I washed my face at the sink, I saw a reflection that looked much older than my actual age. I thought about how much Laurie had made me suffer to end up like this, and the fact that he never helped me turned into a feeling of hatred. I roughly stuffed Laurie's suit, which was to be cleaned, into a plastic bag and left it on the floor. "Don't think this is the end, Laurie. These 5 years, everything you've done, I'll make sure you're held accountable for it." After Samantha's death, there was no more excuse for overtime, and Laurie stopped coming home as if it was the norm. However, he appeared at the courthouse along with the family for the reading of the will, which was held a while after Samantha had passed. It felt like I saw him for the first time in a long while. When Laurie saw me, he gave a sarcastic smile and exchanged pleasantries with the other relatives with a forced smile. Samantha had consulted a lawyer about the will and estate distribution before moving in with us, and its contents were to be announced in front of the gathered family at the family court. In a meeting room devoid of decoration, a well-dressed lawyer began announcing the contents of the estate without interruption. "What?" The relatives were speechless at the content. It started like this. "The estate goes to Karen, who has been caring for me all this time." Among the few sentences spoken by the lawyer, these words resonated strongly with me. Laurie, being the only son, was given the bare minimum of the inheritance, with the majority of the estate left to me by Samantha. Feeling that my hard work in caregiving had been recognized, I was moved to tears, but Laurie, who was listening from a distance, slammed the table and stood up. "How could this be acceptable? Did Karen threaten Mom? What are you talking about? This is Samantha's last letter. Don't say anything insulting. The estate goes to Karen? Ridiculous. This is a conspiracy. Are Karen and the lawyer trying to deceive us?" Laurie, with his face turning red, yelled angrily, but the lawyer calmly denied it. Even after showing the relatives the will written by Samantha's own hand and receiving confirmation that it was indeed genuine, Laurie seemed unsatisfied and frustrated. "This will is unfair." In front of the relatives who were lashing out, the lawyer said, "From Miss Samantha to Mr. Laurie," and handed him a letter. Laurie, with his suit and hair in disarray, roughly opened the letter and started reading it, then immediately tore it up, surprising everyone. Crumpling the torn letter in both hands, he threw it at the wall, unable to contain his frustration, and repeatedly punched his thigh with clenched fists. Surely, Laurie was pondering how to break this situation, I thought. The relatives watched his abnormal behavior from a distance, astonished. The lawyer said, "I also have a letter addressed to Ms. Karen," and handed me a letter from Samantha. As Lori glared at me, I began reading the letter, which started with instructions to read it aloud so everyone could hear, and I conveyed this before starting to read. Everyone present held their breath and listened intently. The letter began with Samantha's anticipation that Lori would tear up her letter and oppose such an estate distribution. Half a year after Samantha's health deteriorated and she needed care, Lori began an affair, which shocked all the relatives. Hearing Lori's voice on the phone every night, it seemed he knew that his affair partner, Ariana, was happily plotting to inherit Samantha's estate after her death. "Everyone, please forgive me for exposing my son's disgrace in such a manner. Surely, my son will tear up this letter after reading it."
Who would believe such a story? Is there any evidence? Where is the evidence?
I carefully laid out photos for all the relatives to see, which I had prepared in advance. These were the infidelity-proof photos that Samantha had prepared for me when she confided in me 5 years ago. Undeniable evidence of the affair captured by a detective or a private investigator. Hiring a detective to set up one's own son. My own son, no less? Mom would never do such a thing.
To that very son, who distanced himself the moment care was needed, and on top of that, had an affair. Do you realize how much you've hurt Samantha?
Lori, who had been disoriented for a while, upon being confronted with undeniable evidence and my determination, hurried towards me and apologized deeply.
"I'm sorry. Karen. I'm truly sorry."
Lori apologized loudly without hesitation. His apologies were so loud they could be heard outside, repeatedly saying,
"I'm sorry."
But while I stared at the back of his head, suppressing the urge to kick him. "It's too late for everything now," I muttered.
I was lonely. I've been lonely all this time. Since Mom's care started, Karen was always with Mom. Even when I wanted to talk about my day with Karen after coming home from work, if Mom coughed, I'd be interrupted. I was fed up.
I was lonely too. And sad. So, let's say goodbye. Lori.
Please, Karen. I'll break up with Ariana right away, so don't talk about divorce. Let's take the inheritance issue back and discuss it once more.
Lori forcefully tried to settle the situation and suggested that just the two of us should talk it over alone and return to our in-laws' home. During the car ride, Lori seemed desperately lost in thought, biting his nails and ruffling his hair restlessly. Some relatives were worried that leaving the two of us alone might lead to an unfortunate incident, but I smiled and assured them that couldn't happen. A man who would push his parents' care onto his wife and engage in an affair during such a time couldn't possibly have the wisdom to alter the situation. Upon entering our home, he apologized again. In our modestly sized home entrance, next to Lori's unused, dirty shoes, he apologized deeply.
Please forgive me. The affair wasn't serious, just a fling. I wanted to break it off, but found myself unable to. But I've woken up. I'll break it off right away. So, Karen, please reconsider the divorce.
A situation where you wanted to break it off but couldn't? If you said it was over, wouldn't that have ended the relationship?
Well, yes. But you understand, right? Coming home to see you with a gloomy face. I just wanted some comfort. Now that Mom is gone, it's just you and me starting a new life.
A new life. Yes, that's about to start.
Exactly. So, let's put aside the talk of divorce for now.
As I coldly looked down on Lori, the front door suddenly opened. Lori, with a bewildered voice of,
What?
Turned around to see Ariana standing there. Ariana, with her long golden hair and flashy makeup, wearing a designer bag on her shoulder, silently looked at Lori before turning her gaze to me. To Lori, who was apologizing.
I heard you got divorced. What's the situation?
She tilted her head and asked. Lori, unable to comprehend the situation for a few seconds, suddenly stood up and grabbed the flamboyantly dressed Ariana by the shoulder.
What are you doing here? Go back. Now's not the time.
What do you mean? You said you got divorced from your slave wife and told me to come over quickly. What's going on? As confusion showed on Lori's face, he slowly turned his gaze back to me. After looking into his eyes, which had become like those of a frightened puppy, I said nothing and walked away from the entrance towards the living room. Lori seemed about to say wait, but was interrupted by the flashy woman pulling.
What's going on? Weren't you supposed to be divorced? Your wife is still here.
At his arm, demanding. I took a teapot off the shelf. The round, floral patterned teapot was one that Samantha cherished. She had fallen in love with it at an antique shop before she needed care and bought it on the spot.
Let's find some lovely cups and saucers to match this beautiful teapot.
We searched together at antique markets and various shops, but never found the perfect match. I fondly remember brewing tea together when she was feeling well, enjoying the aroma of the tea leaves.
Don't touch! Get out of this house! And never show your face again!
Near the entrance, their voices were almost like angry shouts. As I filled the teapot with tea leaves and poured in the boiling water from the kettle, Ariana raised her voice in a shrill cry to Lori.
You called me here! What do you mean by this?
Arguing vehemently. While the tea steeped, I prepared the cups and saucers, and when the time was right, I poured the tea. Pouring tea from the teapot into the cups was always Samantha's role. She would always pour her own first before preparing mine. Samantha used to say, "The last drop of tea is the tastiest, just like life." With a lonely smile. Gently bringing the thin rim of the cup to my lips and taking a small sip, the fragrance filled my mouth.
Please go back. I'll pay whatever compensation you want. Just disappear from my life.
From the living room, where the refreshing scent of tea spread, I silently listened to the harsh words exchanged at the entrance a little distance away. Ariana demanded explanations from Lori repeatedly. I had anticipated it somewhat, but it seemed Lori had promised to divorce me with part of Samantha's inheritance and then enjoy life with Ariana. Eventually, the entrance quieted down. Lori, with a look of resolution, sat in front of me and apologized again. I thought to myself that I had grown tired of seeing Lori's face. That Ariana earlier, I was the one who called her. I used her mobile phone.
So, that's okay. I've broken up with Ariana. It didn't sound like that.
Lori chuckled while stroking his head. I wondered what I saw in this man to marry him. Hiding from Ariana. I'll contact you later. I promised to divorce my wife. He whispered, thinking I hadn't heard. Unaware of the gravity of the situation, I decided to explain very politely to Lori. I understand your plan. As long as we don't divorce now, according to the will, I inherit Samantha's estate. You're calculating that after the inheritance is settled, if we divorce, you'll receive half of the estate and insurance through the distribution of property. But, we're already divorced, aren't we? Lori sat with his mouth agape, unable to comprehend my words for a while.
What do you mean?
I explained that I had submitted the divorce application found in Lori's suit after Samantha's funeral. Probably, he pre-wrote it intending to show Ariana his decision to divorce, but whether due to stupidity or poor planning, his foolishness worked in my favor. When I mentioned that it had already been submitted to the office, Lori paled and stared at Samantha's portrait on the storage shelf behind me. I can't comprehend the extent of Samantha's struggle to prepare such harsh treatment for her only son. But I owe a deep gratitude to Samantha, who went through such pain to help me. Years have passed since then. The in-laws' house became my property, as stipulated in the will. Naturally, I couldn't live with Lori, who was officially divorced from me, so I kicked him out of his parental home and demanded a substantial compensation from him. For the affair, Lori received severe reprimands from all the relatives, and everyone sided with me. At work, the affair became known through colleagues who witnessed it, and Lori lived under critical scrutiny. Ariana, who was initially after the inheritance, broke up with Lori, and it turned out she was deceived by him for money. This led to her aggressive friends chasing him almost every night, eventually forcing him into seclusion. As for me, I was treated very well by Samantha's relatives and decided to start selling handmade accessories more seriously. One of the relatives who ran their own business introduced me to an opportunity to study handmade crafts in depth. Gradually, my accessories began to sell online, and I lived a peaceful and leisurely life. Wearing earrings I made myself and applying makeup every day. The reflection I saw in the mirror no longer looked tired. Now, I saw the face of a mature woman who had gone through life's appropriate trials and experiences. Yes. I suddenly remembered Lori's suit that I had brought back from the cleaners. The suit, still covered in plastic, had been forgotten in the closet. I took it out, rolled it up with the large trash bag that contained yesterday's organic waste, and remembered with delight that today was trash day. After placing the large bag at the trash collection point, I straightened my back, placing my hands on my hips, and thought about having tea from that teapot again when I got back home. Back at home, I lit the stove in the empty kitchen. Sitting on a small chair near the stove, I watched the blue flame and remembered Samantha. The first thing Samantha taught me was the etiquette of brewing tea. Use water just before it boils, and always pre-warm the teapot. Pouring from a little height allows the water to aerate, which is good, she said with pride. Once you pour the water into the teapot, wait for 5 minutes. It tastes much better after being properly steeped. Samantha used to watch the clock, enjoying the waiting time. Distracted, I realized more than 10 minutes had passed.
I've overdone it.
Immediately pouring into the cup, the tea was dark and emitted a strong fragrance. Even though I knew pouring the last drop would make it stronger, I continued to pour from the teapot into the cup. Alone, I stared at the cup and gently sipped. The warm, bitter taste spread through my chest. You're in your mid-30s and you're still single? That's pretty sad. My husband is both handsome and a genius. Madison declares this with a sneer in the middle of the park, looking down on me with a smirk that seems to scream she's on the winning side. The crowd around us starts to murmur. Everyone looks at me with pity in their eyes. That must have been exactly what Madison wanted when she raised her voice. I've been subjected to Madison's cruelty before. I've managed to ignore it until now, but I can't take it anymore. I want to make her experience hell. The same, no, even worse hell than what I've been through. My name is Stella, a 36-year-old working mother. I'm a nurse, and despite the challenges, I find fulfillment in a job that allows me to help others.
Welcome home, Stella.
I'm back. You're home early today.
The meeting I had planned got rescheduled to tomorrow, so I ended up having some free time. Waiting for you at home like this is quite nice.
My husband, Stephen, is a calm and kind-hearted man. Like me, he's busy with work, but he always makes time for the family, and even after 13 years of marriage, I can feel his deep love for me.
Mom, you're home.
That's my son, Mark. He just started middle school this year and is 12 years old. He's still my adorable son, though he's starting to act a bit more grown up. I'm back. Oh, what's that wonderful smell?
Today's my turn to cook dinner. It'll be ready soon.
Mark has grown up to be a kind child, just like his dad. I could have never imagined my life to be like this 13 years ago. I'm always grateful to Stephen and Mark. One day, I found myself alone in a jewelry shop in Chinatown. I was there to get our wedding rings cleaned since they'd started to tarnish. I decided to go for the full restoration service, and they told me it would take about 2 to 3 weeks for the rings to be ready. After leaving my ring with them, I headed to the apparel shop next door. Stephen, knowing I don't often splurge on myself, had given me some money and said, "Buy yourself some clothes you like." While I was happily choosing clothes, someone called out to me.
Hey, aren't you Stella? Huh?
I turned around to see a short woman standing there. Her large, cat-like eyes and plump lips. Anyone would have called her cute at first glance, and her exaggerated head tilt was designed to charm. But that's all in the past now. As she's entered her late 30s, those gestures just seemed embarrassing.
It's been a while. Remember me? As if you could forget, right? After all that happened. But, seriously, Stella, still single? I noticed you're not wearing a ring.
The woman basking in her own chatter is Madison. My friend, or rather, my former friend. Madison and I met in high school. I was a member of the volunteer club. It was a club that visited preschools to read picture books and relearned sign language to communicate with the hearing impaired. I've always found joy and purpose in making people smile and doing something beneficial for others. And Madison was also a member of this club. Why did you join the volunteer club, Madison?
Just because? It seemed fun. Like sign language in Braille.
Madison, with her cute looks and a charm akin to a small animal, was popular among the boys. Wow, Stella, you've already learned that much sign language. You're really talented.
Really? Thank you.
Madison often complimented me, which meant a lot since I didn't have much confidence in myself. She also gave me advice on love.
Hey, I'm going to start dating Brian. It's all thanks to you, Madison. Really? Congratulations.
Perhaps because of her popularity and continuous advice, I got a boyfriend for the first time in my life. His name was Brian. A senior in the top high school in the county, aiming for medical school, a true elite. Brian and I met at a cram school. We happened to be going the same way home, and after talking a few times, there was a mutual attraction, though he hadn't made a move. After consulting with Madison, she said, "You should be the one to go for it." So, I asked him out and we finally became a couple.
Madison, thank you so much.
No problem, we're best friends, right? We'll always be together. Our friendship came to an end when Madison stole my fiancé. After graduating high school, I went to nursing school and worked as a nurse at a hospital. Brian, having passed his medical licensing exams, proposed to me, and we got engaged. I was on top of the world. Then, I received a phone call. It was from Madison. After high school, Madison went to a distant university, got a job, and didn't return to our hometown. We only met once or twice a year. Madison mentioned she would be coming back home soon, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to introduce her to Brian, so the three of us planned to meet. On the day the three of us met, Madison's face lit up the moment she saw Brian.
Brian, you're so handsome. And such great taste in clothes, and plus you're a doctor too? Totally my dream guy.
Yes, but I still have a lot to learn. Smart and high earning. Guess you're not short on cash, Stella. Share some with me, will you?
What do you mean share?
I found myself grateful for Madison's presence in my life, the only one with whom I could exchange such jokes. A month had passed by. Late at night, I got a call from Madison. Sorry, Stella.
For what?
Madison chuckled as if she was holding back a big secret. I only meant to take a little bit from you.
But he was surprisingly easy to win over.
So, I ended up taking everything, not just a little. It seems that during our meeting, Madison had secretly exchanged contact details with Brian. They met behind my back several times and eventually became romantically involved. Why? Why would you do that? We were. It's all a lie, obviously.
What?
You know, it was all calculated. I joined the volunteer club because I thought it would be full of nice, naive people, and yes, I hit the jackpot. There were so many people I could use. People who are too kind, can't judge others well, and share everything once they trust someone. Like you, Stella. Thanks to that, I knew everything about Brian, his likes, dislikes, personality, and even his taste in women. From there, it was an easy win for me. I'm way cuter than you, after all. You're lying, right? Madison? I never expected you to bring along such an impressive guy. Thanks, Stella. The call ended. Later, Brian officially called off our engagement, and the next year, he married Madison. Madison had a baby. That much was detailed in a letter she sent, making sure I knew. I moved far away, rented a house, and changed jobs to avoid any interaction with them. I hadn't met either of them since then. Brian's made quite the name for himself. He's working at a big hospital now, and we've moved. All thanks to you, Stella. Realizing that was her way of saying thanks for giving me Brian, I bit my lip.
I don't dwell on the past.
I put the clothes back and left the store. After returning home, I acted as if nothing had happened in front of my family and went to my bedroom, claiming I was tired. I never thought I'd run into Madison again. I was considering taking a nap until dinner to forget everything when my phone's notification sound went off.
A friend request?
It was from a social media account I had registered long ago and hadn't been using. Opening the app, I was surprised.
A friend request from Madison. Why?
Feeling there must be some intention behind it, I checked her profile and found a post from 10 minutes ago.
Met Stella today. Really nostalgic.
She's as plain as ever.
But still my dear friend.
Here's a photo of Stella picking out clothes. The photo showed me choosing clothes alone. She must have taken it before approaching me. The post had many comments. Wow, Stella really has no taste. Hasn't changed a bit since high school, so funny.
Madison's so kind to help her choose.
Unable to bear it any longer, I closed my phone. She must have sent the friend request just to show me this. Mocking me, exposing me in a public space. This was too cruel. How much more did she need to belittle me to be satisfied? A firm resolve for revenge began to stir within me. Today, I found myself back in Chinatown. A famous large department store had apparently opened nearby, and today, there was an opening sale with a 10% discount at all stores. Thanks to the sale, the department store was bustling with activity. After finishing my shopping, I was waiting on a bench in the plaza. That's when I heard a familiar voice. Hey, is that you, Stella? What's this? Did the poor thing get lured in by the sale?
Madison.
It was the opening day of the famous large department store. I had been wary, hoping not to run into Madison, yet here she was.
I was just here waiting for my family.
Never thought I'd run into you, Stella. That's right. I'm waiting for someone too.
Oh, your family?
But you're single, aren't you?
Got dumped by someone, right?
Hey, Brian. Brian was next to Madison, turning his face away from me, looking uncomfortable.
Mom, is this the lady Dad dumped?
She looks so plain and uncool. A girl who looked like she was in middle school laughed at me. Madison put her hand on the girl's shoulder, beaming proudly.
This is Mia, my pride and joy. She's smart like Brian and goes to a prestigious middle school. She's super cute, right? She's an influencer with 10,000 followers on social media. We're like the successful mother-daughter duo.
They both let out a vulgar laugh just as my son approached.
Mom?
Mark runs over to me. Seeing Madison's puzzled look, I said to her, "Let me introduce you. This is my son, Mark." Madison was taken aback.
Huh? You have a kid? Well, he's got a plain face just like you.
Then Mia tugged at Madison's arm.
Wait, Mom, this is Mark. The super popular YouTuber with 500K subscribers. He's really smart and makes puzzle and quiz videos with his friends. And he's the current heartthrob. He looks even more handsome in person. Wait, what? I'm Mia, an influencer. You know me, right? Can we exchange contacts?
Mia's eyes glistened as she gazed up at Mark, staring intently. Just like Madison used to.
Mia?
Never heard of you.
Plus, I heard from a distance how you were mocking my mom. I don't like people who insult others' families. But, hey, why didn't you tell me, Mom? You got me dumped. It's your fault.
Mia,
I'm a big fan of his. I looked forward to his videos every day, solved puzzles, and always sent comments, hoping to meet him someday. Why is this happening to me? I hate you, Mom.
Mia, wait.
Don't touch me.
Mia shook off Madison's hand and ran away crying. Madison, visibly shaken, turned to me with a furious look.
So what if your son is whatever he says he is? Brian works at the top university hospital in this area. I taught him everything, so he could advance his career. Even how to cover up little medical errors. I mean mistakes, you know. Hey, Madison, don't talk about that. You must be some miserable single mother, right? Not wearing a ring. Being single at 36, what a late bloomer. My husband is handsome and a genius,
Madison said with a sarcastic smile. Then Mark exclaimed,
"Oh, Dad."
"Hey, Mark." Stella. Stephen, having finished shopping, approached us. I smiled sweetly at Madison.
Let me introduce my husband as well. This is Stephen, a doctor at a nearby hospital. You know him, don't you, Madison?
Seeing Stephen, Madison looked like she was about to lose her mind.
Stephen? The genius doctor who became the deputy director of the university hospital at 38?
I nodded in response. Stephen and I met 13 years ago. After Madison stole Brian from me, I moved away to avoid them and started a new job at a different hospital. That's where I met Stephen. Back then, Stephen was a rookie doctor. He appreciated my diligent work ethic and the way I interacted with patients, deeply empathizing with my desire to help others, a sentiment I've held since my time in the volunteer club. We were naturally drawn to each other and eventually got married. And that's how Mark came into our lives.
Just how did you manage to marry someone so impressive, Stella? Did you use some dirty trick? Stop it, Madison.
What's it with you, Brian? Don't interfere.
I said stop it.
Brian slapped Madison with great force. She fell, holding her reddened cheek, trembling.
What is wrong with you?
Brian glared at Madison.
This man is my boss. Haven't I told you before? I work at the same university hospital as Dr. Steven. You weren't listening because you were too obsessed with social media.
Brian deeply apologized to Steven and me. I'm terribly sorry for my wife's insult. Madison, I'm truly sorry. Steven looked down at Brian and growled.
You were talking about medical errors earlier, weren't you? That was just my wife's nonsense. I recall there was a medical error at the hospital you used to work at. A nurse was accused, and she has always claimed her innocence.
Yes, I think I'll have the hospital look into it again. My husband and my son both have good ears. I chuckled behind Steven.
But
Brian collapsed, as if his soul had been drained. Madison was frozen, her eyes wide. I slowly began to speak.
Madison, you thought I was single because I wasn't wearing a ring, but actually, it's currently being serviced.
I should have told you. I'm sorry.
Stella, you.
Madison was shaking, her face flushed with anger. Then Steven tapped my shoulder. Let's go home, Stella. We finished shopping, and besides, today is our anniversary.
That's right. Didn't you book a restaurant? I'm starving, let's hurry. Yes, let's.
We left the plaza together, leaving Madison behind. Her voice of frustration echoed behind us.
What the? No. I won't accept this.
I left the department store elegantly, hand in hand with my husband and son, with her voice as our background music. The dinner at the restaurant was wonderful. Celebrating our anniversary with my family, I couldn't help but feel incredibly fortunate. Yet, a bit of unease lingered. I checked my social media. Yes, it's about Madison. She might well concoct a story from today's events to mock me. I checked Madison's page.
Today was the best day. Was shopping at the department store and met that genius middle schooler, Mark. My daughter even got his autograph. I'm so lucky. Snapped a photo of Mark.
There was a photo of Mark from behind. Likely, she took it as we were leaving the department store. I was dumbfounded by Madison's persistence to use whatever she could. I commented on Madison's post.
Delete that photo right now. And stop lying about getting an autograph.
Then, a new post appeared.
Some people are getting jealous. It's terrible to accuse me of lying when I'm not.
The comments were filled with support for Madison. It was the usual scenario. There was no other choice. I decided to take a final measure. Later, I received a notification on social media. It was a friend request notification. The name was Madison too. An apology, perhaps? Though I had no expectations, I accepted Madison's friend request. Immediately, a message arrived.
Stella, what have you done? My account got deleted because of you. What are you going to do about it?
What am I going to do? I've told you repeatedly to delete it, and you wouldn't listen. I simply told Mark the truth. I informed Mark about Madison's post. We couldn't let the unauthorized photo and lies go unchecked, especially since it was harmful to Mark. Mark took it seriously and posted a video warning. Somebody's been posting my photos on social media, which were taken without permission. I didn't sign anything. Despite requests from me and through my parents for deletion, all were ignored. Taking photos without consent is a crime. Please stop doing this. Mark's fans quickly identified Madison's post, and after many reported it, her account was suspended. The friend request now was from Madison's new account. The 2 in the name likely meant it was her second account. She must have registered again with a new email, but her fixation towards social media was astonishing.
How much effort do you think I've put into my posts? Thinking of the text, selecting the photos. Then why not put that effort into your new account? Post the truth and use proper photos, and you won't have your account suspended again. Shut up. Don't tell me what to do. And don't message me again.
She was the one who reached out to me in the first place. I sighed and put down my phone. Later on, Madison began posting on her new account. Madison posted about her glowing daily life, fun girls' nights out, and parties. The friends appearing in photos with Madison were always the same group, including some from the volunteer club. Then, I received another friend request. I was curious, but recognized the name upon seeing it. It was Olivia from the volunteer club, a frequent presence in Madison's posts. I hadn't talked to her much, but I remembered her face and name. Long time no see, Stella. It's been a while. How have you been?
Yes, well, actually, I wanted to talk to you about something concerning Madison. Do you have the time?
Of course.
What's up?
Madison always posts these flashy pictures on social media, surrounded by lots of friends. But it's all a lie. Everyone's being blackmailed into participating. Madison would dine out, claiming she's introducing them to good places, and then make everyone pay for her share. I was speechless. Finally, understanding the reason why members of the volunteer club appeared in Madison's photos.
Is that true?
Yes. Remember when Madison was criticized for taking unauthorized photos? Right after that, she contacted me. I've been complying, but I'm lost about what to do next. That's why I reached out to you, Stella. I saw you commented on that controversial post, so I thought you might support me. I thought for a moment.
You mentioned being blackmailed. What kind of leverage does she have?
She claimed to have seen me verbally abusing other members back when we were in the volunteer club, even threatening to expose this to my family. But I have no recollection of such actions. She insists she has evidence, and it seems others are in a similar situation. I felt something was off about Madison's claims. I suggested to Olivia.
Sounds like Madison's lying, as usual. She targets kind or vulnerable people. Why not subtly ask around?
A week later, one by one, the friends started disappearing from Madison's posts. According to Olivia, when asked for details or to show proof regarding everyone's weaknesses, Madison couldn't provide any and brushed off the request. Seeing her reaction, friends, or rather, those who had been threatened by Madison, became convinced that the so-called weaknesses Madison mentioned didn't exist. The glamorous daily life previously depicted in Madison's posts disappeared, replaced by solitary visits to cafes and boasts about her latest brand purchases. The likes and comments on her posts dramatically decreased. It was likely all a setup from the start. While checking my phone after work, I received a message.
I'll never forgive you.
I wondered if Madison found out I had given advice. Or was it just her assumption? Either way, I didn't want to be involved anymore, so I didn't reply. A few days later, as I was unlocking my door after returning from work, someone grabbed my shoulder from behind. Turning around, I saw it was Madison.
Madison? Why are you here?
I hired a detective.
I know your husband is off today and has been out with your son since this morning.
Madison pushed her way into my house and began to yell as she entered.
Brian is being interrogated by the police. And because of Mark's photo, even Mia has been avoiding me, and all my friends are gone. I'll end up all alone. You have to take responsibility.
Responsibility? This is all your fault, isn't it? Brian going to the police is because you instructed him to cover up his mistakes, right? And Mia avoiding you is because of the wrong you did. The same with social media. Threatening people to pretend to be your friends. You're the cause of all this. I responded calmly. Perhaps the incident at the department store had cleared my heart, healing past wounds. I won't run away. I won't lose anymore. Wait a minute. When you got a boyfriend in high school, it was all thanks to me. Without my advice, you would have been ignored for life. Now, return the favor. Give back everything you took from me.
You're the one who took everything, Madison. You betrayed me. There's no favor to return. If there's any grudge, it's already been paid back. You should experience the hell I was pushed into.
As I refused, Madison began to cry, crouching down. You're so cruel. Please, we're best friends, right? Tell your husband that Brian is innocent. Make Mark tell Mia he doesn't hate him. Please, I beg you. Black tears streamed down Madison's cheeks. Likely the result of her heavy eyeshadow and mascara dissolving in her tears. Madison's face was a mess. She continued to cry, covering her face with her hands as if she were playing the victim. During this, I quietly went to the bathroom and made a phone call to a certain place. After a while, the doorbell rang. And the door was opened from the outside.
What? What's this?
Madison shivered. We received a report about this house. Yes, she forced her way in here. It was the police officer I had called. The officer knelt down to Madison's level.
You're suspected of trespassing. We've also received several complaints about noise from the neighbors, so you'll need to come with us to the station.
The officers handcuffed Madison and led her to the police car. Of course, she resisted.
No, I'm innocent. Somebody, anybody.
Madison was pushed into the police car and taken to the station. Stephen and Mark were surprised by the event, but were more amazed that I had handled Madison calmly. They were relieved I was safe and hugged me, saying, "We're so glad." That night, Stephen and I were in the bedroom.
Stella, I have some good news.
Good news?
Madison's husband, well, my subordinate, seems to be under investigation for medical malpractice. Rumor has it he's almost certainly guilty.
Is that so? Madison had been malicious since high school. Probably desperate to elevate Brian for her own gain and status. Eventually, Brian was arrested by the police. The scandal of a doctor blaming a nurse for his mistake was sensationalized in the media, exposing their wrongdoing. Madison was also arrested for instructing Brian to cover up the mistake. Both ended up in prison, together. The victim of the medical malpractice is preparing to sue, and it seems both Brian and Madison's lives are effectively over. That goes the same for their daughter Mia.
Stella, isn't this dress nice?
I like it. It looks like it would suit Mom.
Really? Let me see.
We were at an apparel shop, the three of us. The last time I came here alone, Madison interrupted me, and I ended up going home without buying anything. So, we decided to come back together. I tried on the dress that Stephen and Mark recommended.
Isn't it a bit plain? Not at all. It suits you. Exactly, being plain doesn't mean it's bad. If it suits you, then it's all good.
I was happy to hear their words.
Yes, you both are right.
I want to continue spending peaceful days with my family of 3.
I always thought that being married for decades meant understanding each other completely. But a phone call from Joseph made me realize that wasn't the case for my husband and me.
I'm sorry, but it looks like it's going to be difficult to continue sending money for Mom's care.
What? The end of my marriage with Daniel was imminent. My name is Nancy. I've been married to Daniel for 30 years. We both got married at 25 and are now both 55. Over these 30 years of marriage, we've been through a lot. We used to fight nonstop when we were raising our kids. But once the kids grew up and left, our conversations completely stopped. The fighting stopped, but our relationship had grown cold. They say the more you fight, the closer you are. But now I wonder. Now we sleep and eat separately. Living under the same roof, we hardly see each other anymore. It's like living separately in the same house. When I go to pick up the tray of food I left outside Daniel's room, sometimes I find notes from him. But there are always things like,
Today's meal was terrible. Make something better.
or,
Take my suit to the cleaners tomorrow.
or,
I have a business trip for a week. Get it ready.
I wish you could just say it directly. Do you really dislike talking to me that much? I felt sad. Despite everything, I still wanted to get along as a couple now that the kids are gone. It felt like I was the only one thinking this way, sighing through my days. The only thing keeping us together as a couple was Sarah, my mother-in-law. We started living with Sarah when our children left the nest. It's been 5 years since my father-in-law passed away, and Sarah has aged significantly. It worried us to leave her living alone. At first, it was just a bit of difficulty moving around due to age, but over the years, Sarah's capabilities diminished. Now she's completely bedridden. Sarah, still mentally sharp, always looks apologetic. For me, having lost my own parents already, I want to take care of the last parent I have. Even if she's my mother-in-law, I don't want her to feel sorry. I've often heard complaints about mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts from friends, but our home was different. Sarah is a wonderful person who helped a lot when raising the children was tough. I considered taking care of her as a way of giving back, and I've never felt it to be a burden. Moreover, with the increasing support from the government, it's not like I have to manage everything on my own. Yet there was something that still bothered me. It was about Daniel. Despite Sarah being his biological mother, Daniel hardly ever took care of her. In fact, he hardly even tried to see her. It was as if he had forgotten we were living together. I wanted to discuss things about Sarah, but knocking on his door got no response, not even an answer. When he came home, I tried to forcibly talk to him, but he completely ignored me and went straight to his room. I lost count of how many times I heard the door close and lock right in front of my nose. I'm sorry, Nancy, for putting all the burden on you. If only Daniel had been more responsible. Sarah would apologize. Don't apologize, Sarah. It's not your fault. And I don't mind it at all. Please stay healthy and live a long life. I would say, and Sarah would always cry and thank me. The thought of losing such a kind person as Sarah was unimaginable. Her passing was sudden and unanticipated. Daniel, who only glanced at my shocked state, proceeded with the funeral arrangements emotionlessly. The Daniel I saw after a long time didn't seem depressed at losing Mom. Rather, he appeared almost lively. When Sarah suddenly became critical, I panicked and called Daniel, but he cut the call short, saying,
I'm busy at work.
Sarah passed away shortly after. No matter how many times I called, Daniel's phone was off. He didn't return until the next day at noon after hearing the voicemail. I was too stunned and angry to speak, but Daniel continued to ignore me until the funeral was over. At Sarah's funeral, our children showed up. Using this as an opportunity, Daniel communicated with me through our children for anything he needed. By then, my anger towards Daniel was greater than my sorrow for losing Sarah. Daniel treated Mom's passing as if it was just paperwork, without any sign of mourning. Looking coldly at Sarah's relatives shedding tears, Daniel said indifferently,
"Well, it can't be helped, can it?"
Daniel's attitude was so cold, it made me want to ask, is he really her son? It was as if it was someone else's problem. The worst part was what he said to the relatives who offered condolences after the funeral.
"I'm glad she's gone. She was a burden, being bedridden and all. Now I'll enjoy life freely with the inheritance she left,"
he said with a broad smile. This angered everyone, including Sarah's younger brother, Richard.
"Why are you so angry?"
Daniel seemed genuinely puzzled by the relative's fury. He was like an alien to me. I was a mix of anger and disbelief, speechless at his audacity. Complaining about being burdened? He never did anything. He stayed in his room, hardly ever visiting Sarah's room. Even when I asked for help with her care, because it required strength, he ignored me. And yet he had the nerve to say that. Everyone knew I was the one taking care of her alone. They even helped me financially because I couldn't work due to caregiving. Daniel, at his worst, hardly contributed any money to the household. He paid for utilities and taxes reluctantly, but nothing else, not for living expenses or caregiving costs.
"Just use Sarah's pension,"
he'd say. Yet he had the audacity to complain about the meals, confirming that Daniel must be from another planet. No, it would be an insult to aliens to compare them to him. Everyone was appalled by Daniel's dreadful attitude and offered me words of apology. Richard even said,
"You know, you can divorce him."
All I could do was give a wry smile in response. A month had passed since Sarah's death. Life with Daniel remained conversationless. On a day when the caregiving for Sarah was gone and life felt dull, I couldn't even find the motivation to watch my favorite detective dramas. There was a phone call. It was from Joseph, Daniel's brother-in-law. Joseph had been living overseas for work. Given the time difference, he called late at night.
"Hey, Nancy, it's been a while. It's night there, isn't it? Sorry for calling so late, but is Daniel around?"
Hello, Joseph. Long time no see. I'm sorry. Daniel hasn't come home yet.
"I see. I thought his mobile phone was off because he was at work."
There was something I had been curious about. It was about Joseph. Joseph had already been overseas when we got married. Since we didn't meet or talk much, I never really understood the relationship between Daniel and Joseph. But whenever they met, they seemed to talk normally, and I didn't get the impression that they were on bad terms. The same was true for Sarah and Joseph. I never heard that their relationship was bad, and whenever he came back to America, he always made sure to see Sarah. Yet Joseph didn't come back for Sarah's funeral. Apparently Daniel had contacted him, but he said he was too busy with work to return. Daniel was cold to Sarah, but Joseph seemed to get along well with her. That's why I found it so strange that he didn't come back for the funeral, no matter what. But I didn't intend to pry into their family matters, as it might be something between parents and children that I couldn't understand. Still, I thought maybe I should tell him about Sarah's final days. But before I could speak, Joseph said,
"Sorry, but can I ask you to pass a message? Actually, I'm getting old too, and work is becoming difficult."
Joseph was naturally older than Daniel. He was approaching his 60s. It's not like the old days, when you retire at 60, but his salary was getting cut and life was becoming tough.
"So, I'm sorry to say this, but it looks like I'll be short on money soon." I might find it difficult to continue sending the money for Mom's care.
Excuse me? Money for care? What was he talking about? I was puzzled, and Joseph also sounded confused.
You didn't know? I've been sending money for Mom's care and living expenses to Daniel. I don't know how much he gave you from it, but I was contributing 1.5K.
I've never received any such money.
What?
I was utterly shocked. Joseph was just as surprised by my reaction. I had a long talk with Joseph to understand what was happening. Joseph's story went like this. Joseph had been sending money to Sarah for a long time, but when she started needing care a few years ago, he began transferring it to Daniel. Even though Sarah appeared mentally sharp, Daniel, concerned about her ability to manage money due to aging, set up a new bank account for her, and Joseph had been sending money there. However, anticipating a tighter financial future, maintaining the same amount of support was becoming difficult. Feeling obligated to contribute financially to the caregiving he had fully entrusted to us, Joseph had called to say he would not stop the payments completely, but requested to reduce the amount. But I was completely unaware of any remittances from Joseph. The expenses for Sarah had been coming out of her pension, and Daniel had not given me any money at all. I managed the living expenses with the money I had saved from part-time jobs and the assistance I received from Richard and others. I had no knowledge of Joseph's support.
I don't know where the money I sent went. I have a bad feeling about this,
said Joseph. Please wait, I will look into it, I responded and ended the call. Daniel hadn't returned home yet, and he finally came back just before dawn. The next day, after Daniel left, I entered his room. Let's get started, I said, pulling on my gloves. The music of a detective drama played in my mind. I was determined to find evidence. 1 month later. A month had passed since Joseph's call. 2 months since Sarah's passing. I found myself at a certain place. Watching from inside a car, I felt like a detective on a stakeout. The suspect seemed reluctant to show up.
Yeah, Nancy, maybe you should take off your sunglasses since it's night,
said my partner with a wry smile. That was Joseph, temporarily back in the country. Maybe I got a bit carried away. Sorry, I said, taking off the sunglasses and looking at the person next to me. Is it about time, Joseph?
If they stick to their usual routine, they should be taking a break now, so it should be soon.
Just as he finished his last bite of his sandwich, we saw them. There, they've come out.
Let's go.
Joseph and I got out of the car and confronted the 2 people who emerged from the hotel. Excuse me, you 2. Can we have a word?
What, Nancy? Why are you here? We knew you always use this hotel, so Nancy and I were staking it out. What on earth are you doing? What? Joseph too? Why? Why are both of you here?
Well, there's a lot to talk about, isn't there? Let's go back to the house and discuss this more comfortably. Well, then I guess I'll be going. Joseph grabbed Daniel's arm as his face turned ashen. His determination not to let Daniel escape was evident. Seeing this, the woman who came out of the hotel with Daniel, his affair partner, Jessica, tried to leave. But we weren't going to let it go that easily. I grabbed Jessica's shoulder firmly. To the despairing Jessica, I offered a sly smile and said, "Let's talk slowly at our place, shall we?" Jessica silently nodded along with Daniel. Good, she's cooperative. Let's have an explanation then. The 4 of us moved to our house. In front of the sofa where Joseph and I sat, 2 adults sat hunched and intimidated, Daniel and Jessica. I stood up, approached Daniel, and presented a banking card in front of his downcast eyes.
What is that?
Looks familiar, doesn't it?
No, I have no idea what that is.
I brought the card so close to his eyes as if to stick it there, saying, "You do remember, don't you?"
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's my bank account.
What about the $1.5 thousand deposited every month?
What was that again?
You know what it is, don't you? I tapped Daniel's forehead with the banking card.
I'm sorry. It's the money Joseph sent.
What did Joseph say to use this money for?
For Mom.
Right. This is the money Joseph sent for Sarah. So, Daniel, what did you use it for? The bank account's balance was a striking zero. The $1.5 thousand deposited each month were withdrawn almost immediately.
Well, what was it again?
All expenses for Sarah were covered by her pension, right? Daniel, you didn't contribute anything for living expenses or food except for the utility bills. Where did all the money go? Daniel remained silent as I pressed him for answers. Despite it not being hot, sweat was pouring down Daniel's forehead. As Daniel stayed quiet, I turned to Jessica, who sat quietly to the side. Jessica, you're wearing some lovely jewelry. Oh, well. Jessica, who appeared younger than me, was adorned with expensive-looking gemstone jewelry. At the mention of her jewels, Jessica couldn't hide her panic. Did you buy these yourself? Yes, I did. Even though you're unemployed and have no money. How did you know that? The moment Jessica exclaimed in surprise, I slammed the floor with my hand. Jessica jumped slightly. Don't pretend you don't know. The evidence is clear. I don't know anything. As if someone would wear jewelry without knowing its origin.
Nancy, let's calm down a bit, okay?
Regaining my composure at Joseph's calm words, I cleared my throat to settle myself. Then I presented a large envelope in front of the two. As I looked on in confusion, I emptied its contents with a flourish.
Yikes,
exclaimed Daniel. Understandably, he was shocked. Out came a pile of photos. Captured within were Daniel and Jessica on their dates. Some photos even showed them in more intimate, affectionate poses. I picked up a few and showed them to Jessica. Look at this. You're buying jewelry in this store with Daniel. That's the ring you're wearing now, right? This is... Here's another photo with a necklace. And another one showing you buying a brand bag. Not just photos, but there are videos of you buying these items and returning home. They're stored on a computer. Want to see? Jessica turned pale and shook her head vigorously at my words. And? I'm sorry. Daniel bought them for me. So you admit to the affair? Yes. I thought I was lucky to have caught a man who would buy me anything. How long have you been together? For a few years, but I really didn't want to. I hated having a relationship with a married man, but Daniel insisted so strongly. At her words, Daniel became flustered.
Hey, what are you saying? You're the one who wanted to be with me. You said you didn't care that I had a wife, Jessica.
Are you kidding me? You were the one who said, my wife doesn't love me anymore. She's just a housemaid, a caregiver for my parents. The one I love is you. If you won't be with me, I have no reason to live.
Housemaid? Caregiver? He had the nerve to say that, huh? Noticing my glare, Daniel momentarily panicked, but then, unbelievably, glared back.
It's all Nancy's fault. Always busy with childcare, work, caregiving, abandoning her duties as a woman, and leaving me alone.
Daniel retorted, unreasonably angry. This made me furious. What? Don't be ridiculous. I'm a wife, a mother, a daughter. It's only natural for me to fulfill all these roles. I never neglected you, Daniel. In fact, it was you who neglected me, abandoning your duties as a husband, father, and son. Yet you dare to speak so arrogantly, you cheater. After 30 years of marriage, we've had our share of fights, but I've never felt such a rage boiling inside me. The nerve of his selfishness. Then it happened.
Hey.
Joseph's low voice resounded through the room.
Did you squander all my money on that Jessica?
Joseph asked. Although we didn't meet often, Joseph had always been a mild-mannered and kind person. What happens when such a person gets truly angry? The terror was so palpable that I could feel cold sweat down my back. And Daniel, the target of Joseph's glare, must have felt it the most. He was visibly pale and trembling.
Joseph, listen to me. There's no need to listen to your excuses. I've had everything investigated by a detective. Daniel, you quit your job and lived off my money for your affair. That's enough fooling around. How did you...
Just like I had earlier, Joseph slammed his hand on the floor. Daniel jumped several inches in the air. Tears welled up in his eyes in front of an enraged Joseph.
I told you I've had everything investigated.
Joseph's tone was that of someone who had watched too many detective dramas. But Daniel, still tearful, just shook his head vigorously.
Daniel, you took early retirement, squandered your severance and my money, didn't you? Well, that's, and moreover, you didn't even inform me about Mom's passing to keep the remittances coming. That's the lowest of the low. I wanted to take care of Mom myself if I could, but I got a job I loved, and Dad and Mom were happy about it. So even though I was lonely, I thought working hard from across the sea was the best way to show filial piety.
Joseph wiped away a tear.
But I thought Daniel was actually taking care of them. I feel guilty. So even though it was tough, I kept sending money. I wanted to help financially since I couldn't be there. And then, Daniel trampled all over those feelings. Can you understand the pain of not being able to attend your own parents' funeral? I'm sorry.
Joseph's genuine anger, coming from his usually mild-mannered nature, and then his tears. And Daniel, while seemingly repentant, quietly apologized. But Joseph's anger didn't subside.
Anyone can apologize. Show your remorse with actions. I'm so sorry.
Daniel suddenly bowed deeply in apology, but Joseph meant something else.
That's not what I need. Listen, Daniel, you're going to repay every penny to me. Then I'll pass it on to Nancy.
Really? Surprised, I looked at Joseph, who continued with tearful eyes.
Nancy, thank you for taking care of Mom until the end. I talked to Richard and others the other day, and it seems Mom was truly happy. You're a good person, she always said.
Is that so? Sarah always seemed apologetic towards me. I never knew she spoke so kindly of me behind my back. Remembering Sarah's kindness, tears welled up in my eyes. Daniel became frantic.
But Joseph, I've already quit my job and I have no income. What about your severance pay? Well, I have a little bit left.
Unbelievable. How much money had Daniel spent on Jessica? It was clear that this path was headed for ruin.
If you're determined, you can find a job. Show me you're serious, Daniel. But that's unreasonable. It's not unreasonable. And Jessica?
What? Jessica was startled by the sudden demand.
Make sure you pay Nancy a proper compensation in the divorce trial. You knew Daniel was married, right? It's only fair.
Well, but... Daniel was lying prostrate on the floor. Jessica stood in shock. Joseph's lecture continued well into the night. Yep, I didn't even have to do anything. Joseph, you're such a support. Afterwards, after sending the dazed pair away, Joseph stayed at a hotel overnight and returned overseas the next day. He handed over the mountain of issues like our divorce compensation, and Sarah's inheritance to a lawyer. Thanks to a skilled lawyer, I got a smooth divorce from Daniel. Daniel and his affair partner initially lived together but soon parted ways due to constant fighting and being penniless. Daniel somehow found a part-time job, but at his age, his income was modest. Living in an old apartment, struggling to pay back Joseph and barely making ends meet. He tried to seek help from Richard and others, but unsurprisingly, he was shunned by all relatives. Jessica also started working to pay the compensation for the divorce trial. She had been dependent on Daniel, so she's apparently struggling, but I don't care. As for me, I sold the house I received as part of the divorce settlement and moved to a new place with that money. Thanks to my children who always care for me, I'm managing to live, now finally enjoying my freedom. For a while, I plan to watch some old detective dramas online and reminisce about my time with Sarah. I'll look for things I want to do. That's what I was thinking, but now, I'm sitting in an airplane seat. Joseph said,
Why don't you come over here for a change of scenery and think about your future?
I thought going abroad was a bit of a luxury, but I decided to take up Joseph's offer as a reward for all my hard work. By the time I return to America, I'm sure I'll have found something I want to do. Everything will be okay, because life is still full of possibilities ahead.
There's this woman pretending to be mom, and it's just a nuisance. So I'm cutting ties with her today, once and for all. Sadie, my late husband's eldest daughter, unilaterally ended our relationship. I may not have been perfect, but as a mother, I poured out my love to her, and I accepted the estrangement. Fortunately, my late husband's younger daughter, Mabel, chose to stay with me, treating me as her parent. As a mother and daughter, we supported each other, and I watched Mabel grow independent. At her wedding, I couldn't help but cry seeing her in her bridal gown. However, out of the blue, the eldest daughter and her husband came to my place. "Don't give money for the sister's wedding. Hand over some cash now," he demanded. When I refused, the eldest daughter's husband flew into a rage and attacked. That's when he appeared. "What are you doing?" Our savior had arrived, leading to the downfall of the eldest daughter and her husband. My name is Carrie, 53 years old. Now, surrounded by wonderful people, I live a peaceful and fulfilling life. At my age, I often think about the rest of my life, and I'm incredibly grateful for these days. Still, I've had many share of struggles and minor misfortunes along the way. I met my husband, Chandos, at the company I joined after graduating from college. That was 20 years ago, and back then I was content being single. But then he came into my life. I'm the one who has to be chosen by Carrie, but if you say it's okay, I want to marry you. My husband had transferred from a regional branch, a single father in an unfamiliar city with 2 daughters. His wife had passed away, leaving him with the girls. I knew about it from colleagues even before we started dating, but as we grew closer, it became a serious consideration. He was always considerate towards me, and I could see that even now. That's why expressing his feelings wasn't straightforward for him. I choose you. I want to support you, Sadie and Mabel. When I accepted his proposal, his stepchildren, Sadie and Mabel, were 10 and 5 years old, respectively. During our relationship, I interacted with both, trying to bridge the gap, however, awkwardly. I first aimed to become friends with my 2 stepdaughters, who were years apart in age. "What should we do today? What would you like for dinner?" After getting married, I quit my job at my husband's request and focused on household duties. My husband, having lost his first wife, felt more secure knowing I was at home. "I want hamburgers, steaks, and tater tots." How about we pick one for today and the other for tomorrow? "Then hamburger steak." Okay, so Mabel wants hamburger steak. Sadie, what about you, Sadie? It doesn't matter to me. Anything's fine. Are you sure? We can have hamburger steak and your favorite gratin. Fine, as long as there's hamburger steak. Raising the two daughters had its challenges, especially with Sadie, the elder. Sadie was an elementary school student, 10 years old and fairly aware of herself and her family. She understood that accepting me, her second mom, as mom was up to her. Mabel, a preschooler, remembered her birth mom and her passing, but perhaps due to her younger age, she was more quickly adapting to our new life. The difference in their adaptation became more apparent in their attitudes towards me. Sadie called me Carrie, Mabel called me Mom, and was affectionate. Carrie, you don't have to come to the parent-teacher conference. Dad will come. Or if he can't, it's okay if no one comes. Just don't come, Carrie. Oh, please, just don't come. Sadie started to distance herself from me. The surgery might be successful, but I can't say for sure about the recovery. 5 years into our marriage, my husband tragically passed away in a traffic accident. When we rushed to the hospital with the girls, that's all the doctor could tell us. After a severe head injury, my husband died the day after the surgery. After the funeral and the other formalities, a new life began for me and the two girls. Sadie was in the 8th grade, Mabel in 4th. Together with their grandparents and relatives, we discussed our future. Ultimately, they continued to live with me, but my relationship with Sadie might as well have ended completely after my husband's death. Maybe Dad shouldn't have remarried. He just had bad luck. Sadie. One day, Sadie muttered something that I think stemmed from the sorrow of losing both parents so early. I couldn't quite grasp her true feelings. Especially Carrie, who barely knew us. What was Dad thinking marrying her? I mean, it's sad for Mom. I could say my efforts to connect with Sadie weren't enough. Still, I tried to be caring, even if I couldn't quite be a mom. Carrie might be content just acting like a mom. That's not it. Even if you don't accept me, I'm here for you and Mabel. That's what I don't need, the mom-like stuff. We're basically strangers, let's just leave at that. You are a stranger, not a parent. Stop trying to be a friend. It's presumptuous. Sadie completely rejected me. Yet, I still had to ensure Sadie and Mabel were well cared for and safe. After becoming a housewife, I started working part-time. Mom, are you okay? Mabel was quietly concerned about me, struggling with my relationship with Sadie. Being friendly with me felt like a betrayal to her sister. Even as a child, she was burdened with this complicated consideration. I regret not handling things better, but at that time, I was too consumed with day-to-day survival. My first goal was to get Sadie through high school, then on to college or vocational school if she wished. I'll go to a college far away. That way, we don't have to see each other. Deciding to attend college, Sadie showed me the materials and coldly spoke. Don't do anything. Don't even speak to me. While studying, I was strictly instructed not to interact with her. Once I prepared a snack, but she threw it away right in front of me, making it clear I was unnecessary. After Sadie got into her desired college, she left home. I remember feeling more emptiness than loneliness after seeing her off. Living with Mabel, now a high school student, the tension in the house disappeared. Hey Mom, I'm thinking of getting another part-time job. Mabel, you're in high school. You should be focusing on your studies, not money. But I want to save up for further education. Mabel was always worried about causing me trouble or hardship. No matter how much I assured her it wasn't necessary, she was determined. I have to be strong for Mom and Dad who aren't here. Mabel was a resilient girl, juggling multiple jobs, enjoying school life, never skimping on helping around the house, and always prioritizing being home. That's why she chose a nursing school within commuting distance. Being a nurse, I can survive on my own, and I can take care of Mom too, she said, laughing, assuring me not to worry about the future. Mabel eventually graduated from nursing school and found a job. I guess my mission is complete. I muttered to my husband's photo, updating him on our daughters' lives. It wasn't a peaceful journey. Our relationship wasn't perfect. But I raised them without sickness or harm and fulfilled my responsibility. "My sister is getting married," Mabel said. "Really?" "Yeah, she called the other day. She wants to meet you, Mom." 2 years after Mabel started working, I was informed of this news. Mabel, as a sister, stayed connected with Sadie. Apparently, they kept in touch for seasonal greetings and important updates. Through Mabel, I arranged a meeting date. 2 weeks after our initial discussion, Sadie returned home for a family meeting, the first time in several years. "It's been a while, you look well." "What? You'd prefer if I weren't?" Our reunion was met with bitter words. Sadie, now 28, had the air of a fully independent woman. Her fiancé, 2 years her senior, worked for a reputable company. Tall and seemingly quiet, that was just a first impression. He never greeted me. I heard today is about a marriage announcement." When I asked her fiancé, Sadie interrupted. "Yeah, that's right. I'm getting married. Not that I need to tell you, but it's also a report to Dad." "Ah, yes, but thank you for coming to tell me." "What? Didn't you hear? I said it's a report to Dad." "Ah, right. Thank you is weird. You're not my mom. It's creepy." Sadie laughed mockingly and then made an exaggerated request. "Please, Carrie, don't come to the wedding. I'm begging you." She smiled. I was stunned, and her fiancé mimicked my reaction. "Also, could you please not involve yourself in our lives anymore? A mom imposter is just a nuisance. So, after today, we are cutting ties. From me too, please. Don't taint Sadie's life any further." Mom imposter, a stain. I was shocked and angry, but I wasn't sure if it was right to express that. "What do you think you're doing?" Mabel stood up, having welcomed Sadie and her fiancé alongside me. "Do you even understand what you're saying?" She confronted Sadie and glared at the fiancé. "Of course I do. I'm just being honest about how I feel. Today, the mom imposter leaves the stage." "What? Mom imposter? Mom has always been mom. She raised us, got us through school, didn't she?" "That's expected, isn't it? Even a fake mom would do that." Sadie and Mabel's relationship had been unstable from the moment I became their mom. Sadie, distant from me, and Mabel, who grew close. Until now, there had always been a tension among the three of us. Any honest feelings or grievances would snap that tension and reveal our unstable bond. This culminated during Sadie's marriage announcement. As I stayed silent, Sadie and Mabel argued with Sadie's fiancé, watching with a cold smile. "Enough, please. No more fighting, okay?" "Mom!" "What now? Playing the good person?" "If that's what you think, then fine, Sadie." "What?" "I accept your request." "So, we won't see each other anymore." "Yes, if that makes you happy and satisfied." "You won't come to the wedding?" "No, I'll keep that promise too." The best course of action was for me to step back. Mabel tried to argue on my behalf, but I cautioned against conflict. Oh, good. I feel relieved. Goodbye. Thus, from that day, Sadie and I ended our relationship. Mabel, too, told her sister she had had enough and chose the same path as me. I heard about the wedding from relatives. At the ceremony and reception, my and Mabel's existence was ignored, and Sadie only expressed gratitude to her birth mother. She didn't even mention our late father. A colleague of the groom was saying, "He doesn't have a very good reputation. I'm worried about that." Relatives sitting near the groom's colleagues overheard discussions about his past relationships and disruptive behavior in town. "I wonder if Sadie knows," they pondered, apologizing to me for sharing such concerning news. Yet, I was prepared to help Sadie if she ever found herself in trouble, and Mabel agreed. Thankfully, time passed without incident. I continued living with Mabel, and before I knew it, 5 years had passed. Mabel, now 28, married a wonderful man. Feeling the length of those 5 years, I witnessed Mabel's growth. As my gift, I suggested making her wedding a little more luxurious. I wanted to fulfill all her wishes: the dress she wanted to wear, the flowers she wanted to decorate with, and the plans she wanted to realize. Even if it seemed indulgent, I wanted to grant these wishes, not just as a substitute mother, but truly as her mom. "Mom, thank you for raising me, spoiling me, scolding me." We hugged, tears streaming down our faces, still fresh in memory. Then, one day, Sadie and her husband unexpectedly visited their high-rise apartment where Mabel, her husband, and I lived. There was no prior notice. "What brings you here so suddenly?" Though surprised by the unexpected visit, Mabel and I ushered Sadie and her husband into the living room. Sadie looked at me with mocking laughter. "I was surprised to hear from my aunt that Mabel got married. And the wedding was extravagant, right? Must have cost a lot of money." Sadie had heard about Mabel's wedding like me. How I, as her mom, enthusiastically financed the wedding. The grand venue, the extensive guest list, the luxurious hotel. Sadie sighed as she mentioned these details. "Well, Mabel liked you, so you must have been dear to her, but isn't that unfair?" "Unfair? You were the one who rejected me." "But you could have at least given a wedding gift at the time." "Oh, I forgot about it too." I should have reminded Sadie. "Yes, exactly. We totally forgot." Sadie and her husband reminisced about their declaration to cut ties, laughing. Then they demanded a wedding gift and celebration presents from me right away. "I'll send a list of things I want. You'll give me everything on it." "Sister, stop it! How can you be so selfish?" Once again, Mabel reacted before I could. The sisters argued. "Why do you only think about yourself? What? You've been living the good life too." "Like what?" "I heard your husband is quite wealthy, so you must be rich too, right?" Not just me, but now they were demanding money from Mabel. Sadie's husband joined in with a greedy smile. Recalling relatives' comments about his bad reputation, I realized the truth and was frightened. And there was Sadie, not suspecting her husband, doing the same. I was even more appalled. Enough! Memories of struggling with how to approach Sadie as a daughter vanished, and I yelled at her. It seemed this was our inevitable fate. That's the only way I could think of it. "Listen, Sadie, I spent money on Mabel's wedding because she's my daughter." "What? Stepdaughter, right? So am I. So you have a responsibility to give me money too. You cut ties with me, remember?" Sadie continued to complain in response to my argument. There was no written document about the estrangement, just the outcome of a family discussion, so it meant nothing and could be dismissed as a momentary lapse of judgment. In the end, she became defiant about it. But I wasn't going to let such selfishness slide. I decided to clarify the definitive difference between the two sisters. You see, Mabel isn't just my stepdaughter anymore. We've legally adopted each other. What? I wanted to ensure that Mabel could inherit anything I leave behind when I die. We've become an official family. After cutting ties with Sadie, Mabel and I discussed our future. Being just stepfamily could lead to complications regarding Mabel's marriage and my death. A formal parent-child relationship meant Mabel could inherit without issues. I wanted to do the utmost as a parent. So we completed the adoption process. Inheritance? You're kidding. You were just a poor, shabby stepmother. I was, once. I made both you and Mabel struggle. But now, thanks to my job, things are different. This change came about after my estrangement from Sadie. A former colleague from the company where I met my late husband invited me back to work. She was a woman who had taken early retirement to start her own business and needed my expertise. I believe your dad guided me to this opportunity. Our small start in a rented office space grew into a company with its own building downtown. This success allowed me to fund Mabel's wedding and help with the purchase of a high-rise apartment. Unbelievably, we were financially comfortable. Sadie listened to this post-estrangement story with her head down, while her husband clicked his tongue in irritation. "You're lying, old hag! Hey!" As I tried to stop him from getting up, he threw a sofa cushion at me. "Make Sadie your adopted child now. It's not fair to give money only to her sister. Give us money right now." He grabbed a remote from the table, intending to hit me and Mabel. We dodged and tried to escape from the sofa when the living room door burst open and Mabel's husband rushed in. "Mabel, Carrie!" He tackled Sadie's husband, knocking the remote away. "Hey, stop! Who are you?" "Shut up! Hey!" The two men locked eyes, both startled, but Sadie's husband seemed more shocked. You are... You're from the HR department, right?" As we tried to understand, Sadie's husband stammered out an apology. "Sorry, sir, Sir? This guy's Mabel's husband, right? Some rich kid, right?" "Shut up. He's the son of your company's president." In his agitation, Sadie's husband snapped at his wife. Mabel and I exchanged glances at that outburst. We never expected Sadie's husband to be working at Mabel's husband's company. Both Sadie and her husband had gone pale. Indeed, Mabel's husband was the son of a prominent business magnate. Mabel had met him through a mutual acquaintance. He might be a rich man's son, but he's a serious, sincere, and gentle young man. "So, you are Mabel's older sister. I've heard quite a bit about you from Mabel and Carrie." Sir." Mabel's husband didn't know Sadie's husband's name, but he recognized his face. And Sadie's husband, as a senior executive, certainly knew of the president's son. "Sir, I'm so sorry. My wife and I apologize." "No need for that. Prepare yourself. It doesn't matter who you are. Attempting assault is inexcusable." That's... You could be fired. Wait for your punishment." Seeing Mabel's husband's usually calm eyes flare up in anger was a first for both Mabel and me. Overwhelmed by his rage, Sadie and her husband left our house without another word of apology. A few weeks later, "He's been dismissed for misconduct." "Is that so?" "I'm sorry. I just couldn't bring myself to show any leniency." "It's okay. Don't worry about it." Mabel's husband reported the outcome with remorse. Mabel listened in silence, seemingly at peace with the decision. Months later, we heard through the grapevine that Sadie had divorced. Unable to cope with her unemployed husband, she impulsively left him and their home. "Please, I'll apologize as many times as needed. Just help me." Soon after hearing the news, Sadie came to our house, pleading tearfully. However, Mabel and I rejected her plea. Without sympathy or pity, we simply turned her away. After repeated attempts, Sadie eventually disappeared and became incommunicado. Even our relatives don't know her whereabouts now. Nowadays, Mabel, her husband, and I live a peaceful and happy life. My work is going well, and in my personal life, I'm eagerly awaiting the birth of my first grandchild early next year. Talking to Mabel's belly, I imagine the bright future of my unborn grandchild.
Don't live it up on someone else's dime, you parasite. My husband and I, along with my brother and his wife, found ourselves on an overseas trip due to certain circumstances. We managed to get under Belle's skin, leading to her hurling insults at us at the airport. Enraged, Belle started shouting and telling us to go back to America. My husband burst into laughter at her words. All right then, let's head back home. With that, our long-awaited counterattack began. My name is Catherine. I'm a 41-year-old housewife. I work at a supermarket checkout and have a good relationship with my colleagues. My husband Luke is 3 years older than me and works for a major electronics manufacturer. He's currently the manager of the General Affairs Department and is rumored to be a candidate for the next department head. My husband, who is deeply trusted by his subordinates and is very dedicated to his work, is a source of pride for me. One day, out of the blue, my brother Mike, who is a lawyer, paid us a visit. My brother and I have always been close, often sharing meals together. My husband has treated my brother like his own, and the three of us going out for meals was one of my joys. However, since my brother got married, these outings have become much less frequent. I've been avoiding Belle, my sister-in-law, because we don't get along, which has also reduced the time I spend with my brother. And now, suddenly, my brother had come to our house. Naturally, my husband and I were both surprised and asked him what was going on. I need a favor from you guys. We could tell something serious was up from the grave tone in which my brother started the conversation. He pulled out several photos and a voice recorder from his pocket and spread them out on the living room table for us to see. Belle, she's cheating. There in the photos was Belle, arm in arm with a man, presumably her lover, heading to a hotel. The voice recorder contained Belle's voice, affectionately talking on the phone with her lover at home. Conclusive evidence of her infidelity was right there. While Mike is at work, what is she doing? This is unbelievable. I was more furious than the person involved. It's absurd to stay silent when your dear family is being treated so terribly. I stood up from the sofa, pointing at the photos and raising my voice. But my voice halted abruptly when I saw someone in the pictures. Hey, Mike, the person in this photo is... Just as I thought. I came here to confirm that too. Convinced by my brother's words, I exclaimed in surprise, What? My sudden outburst startled my husband, who clutched his heart and said, You scared me. Don't shout all of a sudden. What's going on? This guy, he was my classmate in middle school. He was known for playing baseball, being irresponsible, and being a notorious womanizer. As I pointed to the face of the man in the photo and explained, this time it was my husband who raised his voice. You're being loud too, I sternly told him, to which my husband gave a wry smile and sheepishly scratched the back of his head. Unfazed by our shock, my brother continued. I'm going to divorce her, but honestly, I can't stand the thought of just letting her get away with this, so I need your help. Help? With what? My husband was puzzled by my brother's request, My brother explained that he wanted to ask if my husband's friend David could help.
Honestly, I don't think anything I or Catherine say will affect her. She might be scared of Luke's dad, David. I think he could really make an impact.
Come to think of it, at our wedding, she was terribly scolded by David and ended up crying. I remembered at our wedding when Belle, who was still just dating my brother, came into the dressing room. Until then, I hadn't had a bad impression of Belle. I thought her over-the-top behavior was just teasing, so I mostly ignored it. But it turned out she was mocking me. The turning point was during our wedding. As soon as Belle entered the dressing room, she burst out laughing at me. Pointing at me in my bridal gown, she started mocking me.
You? In pure white? You're already pale and chubby. The white dress just makes you look even bigger.
Belle was taking pleasure in ridiculing me. I was about to snap at her, despite her being overweight herself. But luckily, my father-in-law David was there too. He had been quietly reading a book nearby until my husband returned to the dressing room. David closed his book, slowly approached Belle, and began to confront her.
Hey you, what do you think you're doing? Speaking like that to my son's bride?
Belle's inexcusable remark had caught David's attention, and now this formidable man, easily over 6 feet tall, was towering over 5 foot tall Belle, intimidatingly demanding her to repeat what she said. David, naturally intimidating with his rugged features, would scare anyone at such close quarters. As expected, Belle looked like she was about to cry.
It's not like that. I was just teasing, that's all.
Belle's pitiful excuses didn't convince David at all.
Teasing? You find it funny to say such things? How old are you? You're not 3 years old to say such ridiculous things.
David, with his sound reasoning, pressed Belle, who was clearly shocked and started to cry, apologizing on the spot. I had to intervene to calm David down as he seemed relentless in his scolding. Remembering this incident, I explained the situation to my husband, who immediately called David.
Hey Dad, it's been a while. Actually, I need a favor. Do you have a moment? Huh, long time no see. A favor, huh? If it's about money, I can't help you. Ha ha ha.
David joked heartily as he laughed. David, a straightforward and hearty man, is sincere and dedicated in his profession. He works in construction, traveling around the world. Currently, he is living in Indonesia, moving from one developing country to another. Bringing up such a matter to David, I knew it could lead to a scolding or being a nuisance to him, but we were prepared for that. My husband thought it would be better for my brother, who could explain the situation more calmly and accurately, to talk to David. We entrusted everything to my brother and asked him to explain the situation to David. Upon hearing it, David was furious.
That woman, I won't be satisfied until I show her a piece of hell. I'll re-educate her myself.
David, being family-oriented, was angrier than any of us and readily offered his help. Thus we decided on our revenge against Belle. When discussing how exactly to get back at Belle, David unsurprisingly suggested bringing her to him.
Unfortunately, it's still difficult for me to return to America. Why don't you bring that woman to Indonesia, telling her it's a trip abroad?
Contrary to our confusion, my brother was quick to respond.
Is that okay? I can bring her to Indonesia, but what should we do after that? Has the woman ever worked outside the home?
David seemed to have something in mind, as he first inquired about my brother's domestic situation.
She used to work in medical administration before marrying me, but has been a housewife since. She said she wanted to properly keep the house and all that. What a load of nonsense. Luring men and then talking about keeping the house. I've decided, when she comes here, making sure her plane ticket is one way only.
What do you mean, David? We all exchanged surprised glances at David's statement. While we were confused, a mischievously laughing David could be heard on the other end of the phone.
I'll take care of that woman for a while. I've been short of hands and looking for help. Let her work hard for a while. Maybe get in some exercise, too.
David's words were laden with meaning, and I could almost see his wicked grin. I hear evil laughter. I swear never to make an enemy of this man, I thought to myself. Thus we decided on Belle's vacation trip, which was actually our revenge plan. We immediately began to put it into action. As instructed by David, we arranged a dinner with my brother and his wife and had my brother invite Belle on an overseas trip. Even though Belle threw veiled insults at us during the dinner, I didn't let it bother me. Now is the time to make fun of us like this. This is our last chance to mock us, I thought to myself. Finally, the day of departure arrived at the airport. We were astonished by Belle's extravagant attire. "What are you wearing? We're going abroad, and you couldn't dress up more flamboyantly?" Belle taunted us while putting on a large hat. To Indonesia? Does she think she's a celebrity? I wonder what this person is thinking. Are you planning to be a celebrity? Walking beside her was embarrassing, so we kept our distance and confirmed the plan with my brother. Having finished with baggage and security checks, I started whining to my brother about being hungry. "Mike, aren't you hungry? I want to fill my stomach before we go."
Me too. I don't want to feel sick on an empty stomach. Then shall we go to a restaurant?
Wait, if we're going to a restaurant, let's split the bill. We're already paying for your trip. Belle insisted. As expected, Belle, who is very particular about money, reacted to our actions. She had even had a big argument with my brother over paying for this trip. Despite not earning the money herself, she was acting all high and mighty. My brother and I exchanged glances and laughed. Careful not to let Belle notice, as everything was going according to plan. We headed to a floor lined with restaurants and entered the most expensive one we had researched beforehand, ignoring Belle's attempts to stop us. We ordered the priciest dishes, 2 per person, and decided to drink wine. A whole bottle of wine was prepared, and the bill came out to a substantial amount. Wait a minute. You guys are paying for this, right? We're already spending most of our money on this trip. Belle was truly obsessed with money. Without a word, I handed the bill to my brother, who paid with his card. Belle, seeing this, started yelling at him. "What are you doing? Why are we paying the whole amount when they're the ones eating like fools?"
We invited them on this trip, right? It's only natural to treat them to a meal if we want them to enjoy themselves.
I can't believe this. Are you out of your mind? Belle continued to shout, regardless of being inside a restaurant. Successfully irritating Belle, we paid and finally boarded the plane. We enjoyed our flight in the first-class seats my brother had reserved. This too was part of the act to infuriate Belle. Throughout the flight, my husband and I continued to raise Belle's tension, enjoying expensive wines and appetizers. Belle, unable to scream on the plane, was visibly seething with anger. We found the entire situation amusing and continued to indulge in luxury while infuriating Belle. We can't help but find the scene strange. I was enjoying a momentary luxury as I continued to increase Belle's anger gauge. After nearly 8 hours, we finally landed. Though I wanted to stretch my legs after landing, we had one final act to perform. My husband and I, along with my brother, stopped at various souvenir shops in the Indonesian airport and bought a range of local products. What are you doing? We just got here. But we might get hungry at the hotel, right? Mike, can we buy this too?
Sure, go ahead. Luke, you too. Don't hold back. Thank you, Mike.
We ignored Belle and kept buying items, filling our basket with local specialties and unique shirts. With our hands full, we started heading to the car that was supposed to pick us up, and that's when it happened.
Enough is enough, you guys.
As we were leaving the airport entrance heading towards the parking lot, Belle suddenly screamed. The 3 of us exchanged glances and signaled each other with our eyes before turning dramatically towards her. What's wrong, Belle? You're shocking everyone around us. What's wrong? Your nerves. How much of someone else's money do you plan on spending? Mike, aren't you being ridiculous?
Why? It's a trip. We're supposed to enjoy it. If we don't, there's no point in bringing you along.
Belle, frustrated with no one taking her side, finally lashed out at us.
Don't luxuriate on your husband's money, you parasites. We don't need you. Go back to America right now.
My husband burst out laughing, as if he had been waiting for these words. Our long-awaited moment had arrived, and our counterattack was about to begin.
All right then, let's go back.
Laughing at Belle's words, my husband and I turned towards the airport, pretending to leave.
Go. You're in the way. We're staying. Just go back on your own, you beggars.
Her words were like those of a small child trying to stand up for themselves. My husband and I struggled to keep up the act, as we couldn't help but laugh at her ridiculous outbursts. Should not. We need to stay composed. If Belle finds out about our plan, it will all fall apart. As we were thinking this, Belle continued to hurl insults at us. Then suddenly, David appeared behind her.
Why don't you just enjoy Indonesia with me alone?
David said, placing his hand on Belle's shoulder and smiling broadly. Surprised by his voice and the touch on her shoulder, Belle jumped. Recognizing the familiar voice, her face drained of color, and she slowly turned around, terrified. Seeing David, Belle screamed and involuntarily sat down. Her ridiculous reaction made everyone but Belle burst into laughter. The response was so unexpected that we couldn't contain our laughter. Pretending to be surprised, my brother joked.
What are you so shocked about?
Well, I thought to myself that he was also a bit wicked. Belle stood there dumbfounded, probably wanting to say something but too shocked to speak. Finding her reaction amusing, my husband and I laughed until tears streamed down our faces. Unable to understand the situation, my brother crouched down to meet Belle's eye level, smiling broadly as he spoke to her.
Well, we're going to head back. You take your time and enjoy Indonesia.
Saying this, he lightly patted her shoulder and left her with an insincere word of encouragement.
Hang in there.
Before standing up. Unable to comprehend the words or the situation, Belle clung to my brother's leg, crying out, "Wait, please explain what's happening." Overwhelmed by anger and confusion, Belle exploded emotionally. "Why is he here? Why are you even trying to leave? What about me? You're just going to leave me here alone?"
You were the one who said Catherine and the others should go back. I only came on this trip because they were here. I never wanted to enjoy it alone with someone like you.
What?
You'll have plenty of work to do here. There's lots of volunteer work. You won't have time to be idle. Leave the rest to me.
With that, David pried Belle off my brother, holding her firmly to prevent her escape. Even though David was over 70, he was still actively involved in construction, and not someone Belle could easily escape from. As we three were about to leave Belle behind, she remained caught by David, screaming towards us. "Coward! You've been deceiving us from the start." "Who's the coward here? This traitor?" My words were sharp, and I glared coldly at Belle. "You, I will never forgive. You'll pay dearly for hurting us."
Too bad for you. Good luck with everything. Bye.
With that, my husband and I, leaving Belle still making a scene in David's arms, boarded the plane to America. Belle, penniless, had no choice but to earn her way back from Indonesia. Of course, that wasn't her plan. Unable to take a part-time job, she resorted to volunteering and scraping together small amounts of money David gave her to save for her return. But earning money was harder than she thought. During the high season, plane tickets were double the normal fare. The cost skyrocketed, making it nearly impossible to return without working tirelessly from dawn to dusk. Upon our return to America, our phones rang incessantly every day. Naturally, my brother experienced the same. Both of us blocked Belle's number due to her persistence. Belle, who hardly worked, struggled with physical labor, lost a lot of weight, and cried daily, longing to return to America. After nearly 3 months, as her visa deadline approached, David contacted her, signaling it was time to return to America. Finally, the climax. I thought our revenge on Belle was over. On the day we went to pick her up, we approached the airport with solemn faces. "There! How dare you leave me behind that day? Why are you here?" Seeing Belle upon her return, she was thin and sunburnt from working outside, clearly showing how much she had been exploited by David. Her changed appearance made it obvious. We greeted her with smiles. Her anger at being abandoned surged, but her loud voice quickly faded into a whisper, because there was another person with us, my brother and my husband, and one more.
Belle, I'm sorry. Let's break up.
To everyone's surprise, the person we brought was Belle's lover and my former middle school classmate. Actually, while Belle was in Indonesia, we had been in touch with him. Luring him to my house was easy, then confronting him with my brother was even easier. We laid out all the evidence of his affair and made sure he knew we were aware of his family.
Do you understand the consequences if I take this to court?
We cornered the lover. Tears flowing, he immediately begged my brother for forgiveness, pleading not to tell his family, promising to do anything. Hearing this, my brother successfully convinced him to agree to break up with Belle in front of us upon her return. This is how we brought him to the airport. "Wait, this can't be real. Why? Why are you here? Break up? Wait, why in front of him?" Belle was exhausted, and this turn of events was overwhelming. It's no wonder her thoughts couldn't keep up. Panic was evident on her face, fearing the revelation of her affair, but it was too late for her. We felt no sympathy for her, nor do we owe her any explanation. My husband and I silently watched my brother's actions, glaring at Belle.
You must have had your fun until now, haven't you?
"No, please wait. It's not like that. Please, don't say anything more."
Our life together ends here. Let's get divorced.
No, I don't want that. Please. I won't ever do this again. I'll live honestly from now on, so please don't talk about divorce. Belle, back in America, was in utter disbelief and cried hysterically. Abandoned by her lover and now disowned by her husband, she experienced true despair. I watched her cry and scream with cold eyes, realizing how much a person can lose control in such a situation. "Please, I'll do anything, just not divorce." Belle clung to my brother's legs, sobbing and pleading. She seemed not to care about the eyes of those around her. "You said anything?" Hearing her say anything, I walked over to where Belle was. Noticing my approach, Belle clung to me, apologizing profusely and begging. "I'll do anything. I'm sorry for everything I've done to you. Please persuade him not to divorce me." If anything means anything, then never show your dirty face to us again. Honestly, just seeing your face makes me sick. I spoke these harsh words to Belle, who was crying and begging, filled with all the resentment and hatred I had. Hearing this, Belle fell into deeper despair and was at a loss for words. After that, everything happened very quickly. Exhausted, Belle didn't argue back and was practically dragged home by her brother and the person she had cheated on her spouse with, where they started the divorce proceedings. Belle was in a daze for a while, bedridden and barely able to eat, feeling cornered, but she knew it was her own responsibility. No one was supposed to feel sympathy for her. Eventually, Belle recovered enough to hold a conversation, and she got divorced from her husband. Now she's living a life just manageable enough to get by all alone. And so our peaceful daily life returned, and we decided to thank David again. Back then, I did pay my brother back for the huge shopping and dining expenses, but to my surprise, he refused to accept it.
You guys made my divorce and revenge possible. Let me pay for this. I'll thank you properly later.
So we decided to graciously accept his offer. This time, we ended up going to Indonesia for a celebration party. We enjoyed the trip, relishing the cuisine we couldn't fully appreciate during our last visit, And we got a chance to see the architectural work David was involved in.
Starting today, Mom is moving in with us. She's your mother-in-law, so take good care of her.
Without any discussion or notice, my husband Huey brought home his mother, Isadora, announcing that she'd be living with us. To make matters worse, he had decided to turn my room into Isadora's room and dumped my belongings in the hallway. Where am I supposed to sleep now that my room's gone?
You've got the hallway, haven't you?
He said with a smirk as I turned to face him, incredulous. My name is Gina, and I'm a 38-year-old housewife. 5 years ago, I lost both my parents in a sudden car accident. Having no siblings or relatives, I found myself utterly alone. Craving the connection that comes with family, I was desperate to get married. That's when I met Huey, my current husband. His unwavering commitment, self-assuredness, and above all, his kindness drew me in. We dated, got married 3 months ago, and have been living together since. I used to work as a nurse, but overworked myself to the point of falling seriously ill. The diagnosis? Burnout from excessive work. When I told Huey, he said,
I've been worried you're pushing yourself too hard. Your health is what matters most. Let me handle work. Why don't you wait for me at home?
His concern for my well-being touched my heart. Though hesitant to leave my nursing career, I knew I could return any time thanks to my credentials. So I quit my job and decided to be a full-time housewife. But that's when things began to change between Huey and me. He started to restrict what I could do, saying it was for my own good. But it escalated. Before I knew it, he began to control every aspect of my life. Feeling obligated because he was supporting me financially, I adopted the mindset that I must obey him. Life went on like this for about 6 months, until one day, I returned home from grocery shopping to find Isadora there. I greeted her, thinking she had come for a visit. Heading to my room to put away the groceries, I found all my belongings dumped in the hallway. Confused, I stood there until Huey came to explain. My in-laws divorced when my husband was little, and he was raised by Isadora, his mom. He hadn't seen his father in years and was very attached to Isadora. For quite some time, he'd been planning to have her move in with us, unbeknownst to me. I was stunned to hear that these plans had already been in motion. Just then, my husband dropped another bombshell.
Mom has been doing everything by herself for years. She's getting up there in age, and I want to make her life easier. So, starting tomorrow, make food for 3 people, okay? Take care of all the household chores, and don't bother Mom with them. Got it?
Before I could fully understand what he was saying, he added unapologetically that since there's no room for Isadora in this house, she'll be using my room, and my belongings were tossed into the hallway because they were in the way. When I asked where I would sleep, both my husband and Isadora just laughed. Saying there was no other place but the hallway. As crazy and unfair as this sounded, my mind quickly became foggy, filled with thoughts that I should fully support this and take care of Isadora. I accepted my husband's ridiculous proposal, saying, "All right, I understand. Let's get along starting today." After all, I owe everything to my husband, and it's only natural to extend gratitude to Isadora who raised him. I was enthusiastic about meeting their demands. Living with Isadora, both she and my husband began to criticize every little thing I did. "You're terrible at washing dishes. Are you really that stupid?"
"Today's meal is too salty. Are you trying to kill us?"
I became the target of their verbal abuse. So there I was, mentally and physically drained, ultimately spending my nights sleeping in the hallway. I didn't recognize the absurdity of my situation. Whenever I felt tired, I blamed myself for not doing enough and obediently went on with my day. Then one winter day, Isadora ordered me to clean every corner of the house and prepare a dinner worthy of a luxury hotel for someone special she was bringing home. I spent the day scouring the house and shopping for ingredients, frantically researching recipes to create an array of lavish dishes. Once the meal was ready, I was told to stay in the hallway so as not to bother the guests. I complied without question, making sure to stay out of sight. From the laughter that occasionally leaked from the living room, I gathered that Isadora's guest was her current boyfriend. As the night wore on, I heard that the guest would be staying overnight. Isabella told me to wait in the kitchen, adding, "Gina, if Louis finds out you sleep in the hallway, he'll be shocked. It's not a good look. Could you just sleep in the kitchen tonight, okay?" I was used to listening to my husband, so I went to check with him. He seemed to be in a bad mood from work and yelled, "Don't come in here for every little thing. I don't want to see your face," before hitting me. Being hit was nothing new, so I left quickly to avoid making him angrier. Since I couldn't confirm where to sleep with my husband, I decided to sleep in the hallway as usual. Early in the morning, I was awakened by a surprised male voice and looked up to see a man staring down at me. I didn't see his face yesterday, but it's probably Louis, Isadora's boyfriend.
What are you doing here? Do you sleep in this house?
Caught off guard, I told him the truth. I'm Huey's wife and usually sleep in the hallway. Seeing my nonchalant attitude towards the situation, Louis paused, then asked for my contact information. When I told him I didn't have a cell phone because my husband manages it, he suggested meeting at a nearby cafe when the sun comes up. He asked me to come secretly, without telling my husband or Isadora. His serious gaze convinced me to agree. Later, Louis went home, seen off by Isadora and my husband. As the sun rose, I told my family I was going grocery shopping and headed to the cafe where Louis was already waiting. We went inside. While waiting for our drinks, Louis said,
"Actually, I've invited another person today."
Shortly after, a woman he knows arrives. "Nice to meet you. I'm Eileen. I've known Louis for a long time." Eileen was an excellent listener, and we had a lively chat. It had been a while since I talked to someone other than my husband and Isadora. I realized I had almost forgotten how to communicate, and I had a great time. On the way home, Eileen, sensing something was off, kindly asked me about my life. I told her the truth, and she invited me for tea again the next day. I agreed. For several days, our morning tea and casual chats continued. As I spoke to Eileen in the cafe, I started to feel something was wrong with my current life. I became emotional during our talks. It was then that I finally realized my current environment was unjust. Eileen softly smiled, gently wiping away my tears with a handkerchief. It turns out Eileen is a mental health professional. Louis had noticed something was off and asked her to come to listen. Eileen explained that if she had immediately pointed out that my husband and Isadora were the issue, I might have closed off. So she took the time to support me, helping me slowly realize what was going on. "At first, I listened to you because it was a job required, but now it's different. I want to help Gina as a friend. If Gina wants our help, we're here, always ready to lend a hand." Hearing these warm words, I can't stop the tears from flowing. Eileen gently rubs my back as I continue to cry uncontrollably. When I finally stop crying, it's time to part ways with Eileen and head home. As we say goodbye, she assures me, "We're always on your side." On the way home, my clouded thoughts finally clear, filling me with a newfound sense of relief. That night, when my husband starts complaining about my cooking again, for the first time, I retort, "If it's too bland for you, add your own seasoning." My husband is momentarily surprised, but quickly turns red with rage.
"How dare you speak to me like that?"
he shouts. Isadora, who's already there, starts to get angry as well, and both she and my husband yell,
"I want a divorce."
"Get out of this house now!" Thinking that it might be a good thing for them to kick me out, I simply nod my head as usual. While packing, my husband orders me to be ready for a shower and make the next meal more delicious. To all of this, I reply as always, "It's because I'm a bad wife," and finish packing my minimal belongings. My husband, annoyed that things didn't go his way, lets out a loud sigh and grabs a beer from the kitchen. Ignoring him, I take my bags to the front door. Isadora follows me, letting out an obvious sigh. "If you're really sorry, I might forgive you. Now go do the dishes." "No, I'm leaving because my husband told me to." Upon hearing this, Isadora goes to call my beer-drinking husband. Ignoring them both, I walk out of the house and into the waiting taxi, putting distance between myself and that home. Inside the taxi, I wonder why I'd ever listened to such people. Maybe unconsciously, I didn't want to sever family ties. Realizing that I had been enduring my husband and Isadora's unreasonable demands and verbal abuse for this reason makes me firmly decide once again that I will divorce for my own freedom. Given the toxicity I had endured through the divorce, I had already begun preparations to claim financial compensation. Along with the divorce papers, I sent an invoice. Ever since I left the house, my phone was bombarded with calls and texts from my husband and Isadora, all of which I ignored. Unreachable and furious after reviewing the divorce papers and bills, my husband decided to take legal action against me. I got a notice from the court saying that he had filed a lawsuit against me. I was shaken for a moment, but then thought, well, it figures with those people, and began preparing my case. Thanks to Eileen's advice, I had a strong case. I presented as evidence the recordings I had made of my husband's abusive language before leaving the house, as well as photos of injuries he had inflicted on me, and medical reports that backed them up. The evidence worked in my favor, and I won the case. The court ordered him to grant the divorce and pay tens of thousands in compensation. Finally, I gained a peaceful, humane life. Afterward, Eileen told me that I was oblivious to it, because I was so emotionally dependent on my ex-husband, but the yelling from him and Isadora was heard by the neighbors. There were already rumors that I was perhaps being abused, or at least mistreated. My departure confirmed their suspicions, and the rumors spread like wildfire. I heard they're now seen as the family that tormented their wife. Isadora and Louis broke up right after. It seems they stayed together while I was there because they feared it might hurt me if they separated. Isadora was apparently devastated, clinging to Louis's feet and crying, but he firmly told her,
"I can't be with someone who doesn't value their son's wife and family. I can't imagine a future with someone who can't feel gratitude for the people close to them."
Since I left the house, my husband was forced to take care of household chores, something he was never good at. He and Isadora seemed to be constantly arguing about dividing up the tasks. He used to relieve his work stress by taking it out on me, but with me gone, he turned to alcohol for relief. During our legal proceedings, his drinking increased significantly. When he drank, he would become violent, and he became even more aggressive, now even towards Isadora. One day, he went to work still under the influence and caused some trouble. This led to disciplinary action, and he lost his job. Now he seems to be doing tough physical labor to make ends meet. Fortunately, I had received the settlement money in a lump sum, so I wasn't affected by his downfall. After giving heartfelt thank yous to Eileen and Louis, who had helped me, I moved far away and started a new life. Even though Eileen and I now live farther apart, we continue to deepen our friendship, meeting for coffee and taking trips together. Though this was an awful experience, and I didn't gain a family, I found something equally valuable: true friendship. I've returned to nursing, feeling even more fulfilled than before as I work diligently for my patients. And I've tried starting new things that I've always been interested in, like marathons and swimming. I'm enjoying my days, free and uncontrolled by anyone, filled with fun and excitement.